All right, Lakers fans, picture the energy around the team right now, because the atmosphere is shifting as the roster inches closer to being whole again. The biggest storyline, of course, is LeBron James and his imminent return. Nobody inside the building is giving an exact game or exact minute, but all signs point to him stepping back on the court very soon, whether it is in this matchup against Utah or in the next one. And the interesting part is how that return affects everything around the team. It is not just about plugging in a superstar. It is about finally seeing the blueprint of this roster, finally watching the group function the way it was drawn up months ago. For the first time in a long stretch, you have players recovering together instead of dropping one by one. You have guys who have been doing heavy lifting, suddenly sharing that responsibility with the pieces who were originally meant to carry that weight. Even players who were out for weeks are back in the rotation. And you can feel that anticipation of what it might look like when the entire unit is available. Considering how competitive this team has been even while shorthanded, the idea of everyone healthy becomes almost exciting in itself. And that leads to the part of the season where things start to shape into something more structured. Up 8 Acqui, the coaching staff had no choice but to juggle lineups, adjust defensive coverage on the fly, and lean on guys who are not projected to play as many minutes. Now the dynamic changes completely. With LeBron returning, with role players regaining rhythm, and with the team no longer relying on emergency solutions every night, the rotations can begin to stabilize. This is the moment where you start to evaluate which pairs and trios of players truly mesh, who elevates the starters, who complements the bench unit, and who fits better in shorter stints. It is not about sidelining anyone. Over an entire season, there will always be injuries, back-to-backs that require rest, and nights where certain matchups call for different skills. But it is impossible to build a real identity without having your full group together for at least a solid stretch. When you think about the opening group, it becomes clear that some choices are more natural than others. The idea of shifting Rue to the bench makes a lot of sense because he immediately gives the second unit stability, scoring, and size. And he is the type of guy who does not get caught up in labels like starter or reserve. He only cares about his minutes and whether he is part of the group that closes the game. That mentality actually gives the coaching staff freedom to experiment without worrying about disrupting egos. And closing lineups will always depend on the flow of the night. If someone suddenly gets hot from outside, or if a certain combination is locking down defensively, you ride that wave. This team has shooters, slashers, defenders, and creators spread throughout the roster. On some nights, an unexpected spark might be the reason you finish a game strong. But when you try to picture a default starting five, the structure feels pretty straightforward. You have Luka handling the offense early, because that is what he does best. He loves using the first quarter to get into rhythm, attacking mismatches, finding his spots, and putting pressure on defenses that still have fresh legs. And with LeBron back on the floor, you have a secondary creator who can organize the offense if Luka is being blitzed or if the defense forces the ball out of his hands. There is no need to overcomplicate that dynamic. You let Luka be Luka, and if you need a reset, the ball can move to LeBron, who has seen every possible defensive scheme in the league. For that reason, some people argue Austin Reeves should come off the bench. Not because he has been bad, far from it, but because it would maximize his scoring and playmaking against second units. But realistically, that is not happening. He is playing too well. This is a contract year, and the organization sees him as part of the foundation. So instead of debating something that will not happen, it makes more sense to focus on how to build around him. And defensively, that is where things get complicated. You want guys who can protect the rim, crash the glass, and switch across multiple positions. That is why someone like Jared Vanderbilt always sneaks into the conversation. He brings energy, length, and rebounding that you simply cannot manufacture. Even if he does not space the floor consistently, his defensive impact and his hustle create second-chance plays that transform the rhythm of a game. Sometimes you need chaos in a positive way, and he brings that every time he steps on the court. Jake LaRavia also appears in that conversation, especially because he has shown flashes of being a two-way player. His shot is still inconsistent, but when he catches fire, he changes the geometry of the offense. Defensively, he can guard more than one position, and that versatility becomes valuable when you're trying to maintain a certain level of physicality without sacrificing too much spacing. Even so, when you compare him to Vanderbilt, the safer choice early in games leans toward the guy who guarantees stops, rebounds, and a higher defensive floor. A cold start on offense happens all the time, but a cold start on defense can bury you before you reach the second quarter. That is why many coaches lean into the philosophy that you can always inject offense later, but you cannot always fix a defensive hole once the damage is done. A 9-point deficit can become a 20-point disaster before you even finish adjusting your rotation. If your initial group can hold the game steady, even if they are not blowing the doors off offensively, you give yourself room to add scoring options later. And this Lakers team has plenty of offensive spark plugs. They can rotate Reeves, Rui, LaRavia, and even some of the younger wings depending on the tempo of the game. From there, you begin to look at the rest of the rotation. Gabe Vincent, for example, brings experience and intelligence, but if his outside shot is not falling, it becomes harder to justify long stints when you have bigger and more athletic options who can defend at a higher level. It is not a knock on him. It is simply a matter of which skill set gives you the most flexibility on a specific night. And then you have guys like Max Christie, who can be inserted in small bursts depending on the matchup, or players like Maxwell Lewis or Bronny, who may fall out of the rotation now that the roster is healthy, but will always be needed during the long grind of the season. Seeing how all of that fits together is what makes this moment so intriguing. With LeBron returning, with Luka already anchoring the offense from the opening tip, with the defensive reinforcements finally healthy, and with the bench unit growing deeper, the team is entering a phase where the coaching staff can finally decide what the real structure looks like. There will still be experiments because that is natural early in the season, but now the experiments will actually have meaning. This is the moment where chemistry begins to form, where roles start making sense, and where the team can finally stop improvising and start building. And once the full roster is finally available, that is when the real evaluation begins. The coaching staff will no longer be forced to patch holes or rely on emergency lineups just to keep things afloat. Instead, they will get the chance to make deliberate choices, to test combinations with a purpose, and to see how different players react when the team is no longer desperate for minutes from them. It is in this stage of the season that you begin to identify which players deserve expanded roles, which ones fit best in certain stretches of the game, and which ones may end up as trade pieces if the front office decides the roster needs another adjustment later in the year. Having everyone healthy allows you to observe a true sample size, something impossible when half the roster is in street clothes. One of the biggest questions revolves around how the bench unit will take shape now that Rui shifts into that group. His presence changes everything. Suddenly, the second unit has a reliable scoring option, someone who can punish smaller defenders in the post, attack closeouts, and maintain offensive flow when the primary creators are resting. That alone elevates the structure of the rotation. Add in the fact that he is comfortable finishing games when needed, and you get a versatile forward who can adapt to whatever the night demands. Alongside him, you will likely have Jake LaRavia in shorter bursts, using his shooting threat and his ability to defend multiple positions to stretch the floor or disrupt big wings. Jared Vanderbilt becomes the defensive engine off the bench, providing constant activity, switching aggressively, and cleaning up missed shots to create second-chance opportunities. When he comes in, the entire energy of the game tends to shift. Then you have Jackson Hayes as the backup big, whose rim protection and vertical spacing can completely change how the team attacks. When he is rolling hard to the basket and finishing lobs, defenders are forced to choose between collapsing on him or giving space to shooters on the perimeter. His impact is not always measured by points, but by how he manipulates the defense, opening driving lanes for scorers and creators. And with Gabe Vincent available again, the bench gains another ball handler who can organize the offense when the game gets sloppy. On nights when he is hitting his outside shots, he becomes a crucial spark who helps stabilize the pace. The challenge is figuring out how many minutes he should get on nights when his shot is not falling, especially with so many bigger, more athletic wings fighting for the same opportunities. Another name that deserves attention is Edu Fierro, whose physical tools bring something unique to the roster. His size, energy, and relentless approach to rebounding make him a valuable option when the game needs toughness. Even if he plays only 10 minutes, those 10 minutes can completely alter the rhythm of a matchup. Having him available also means the team can steal rest for some of the starters without sacrificing too much versatility. And as the season progresses, seeing how quickly he grows within this structure will be an important storyline. His potential is obvious, and giving him the right pockets of playing time will help accelerate that development. Maxi Kleber is another piece who might earn occasional minutes, depending on the matchup. His ability to stretch the floor as a big and still defend in space opens a different type of lineup configuration. There are moments when two big lineups can overwhelm an opponent on the boards or protect the rim more effectively, and Kleber gives you that option without completely sacrificing spacing. His return from injury brings another layer of flexibility to the rotation, and while he may not play every night, he is a tool that can be deployed when the situation calls for something unconventional. With the roster deeper than it has been all season, some players will inevitably fall out of the rotation. Bronny, for example, showed real flashes when injuries forced him into action. He applied pressure defensively, kept the ball moving, and played with a maturity beyond his experience. But with the full roster returning, he becomes one of the developmental pieces who will get minutes situationally rather than nightly. The same happens with Dalton, who has struggled to find consistency in his shooting or his defensive reads. His talent is undeniable, and there may be games where he is thrown in to see if he finds a rhythm. But the priority now becomes stability, and there are simply too many wings ahead of him in the competition for minutes. From here, the season will evolve in a very different way. Instead of trying to survive stretches without half the roster, the Lakers can start building their true identity. They can focus on ironing out defensive principles, creating offensive patterns that become second nature, and sharpening the chemistry between key players. The presence of LeBron alone elevates the group, not just through scoring or passing, but through his instincts and leadership. When he shares the floor with Luka, the team gains a level of control and unpredictability that very few defenses can handle. With Reeves complementing them, with DeAndre battling in the paint, and with role players embracing their responsibilities, the starting group finally has the balance it needs. The bench, stacked with forwards who bring different strengths, becomes a weapon on its own. Some nights you might see a defensive-heavy lineup that applies nonstop pressure. Other nights, the focus may be spacing the floor with shooters and attacking mismatches. That is the luxury of having depth. You're no longer playing players just because you have no other choice. You're choosing which strengths you want to amplify based on what the game demands. And for the first time all season, the coaching staff has the freedom to experiment without being forced into it. Before we continue, we ask that you leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any exclusive Lakers updates. Moving on, the basketball world is buzzing with whispers that could shake the very foundations of the Western Conference. Sources close to the situation suggest that a prominent player from the Los Angeles Clippers has quietly accepted an offer from none other than the Lakers. While official statements remain elusive, insiders indicate that talks have been progressing behind closed doors, fueling speculation across social media and sports networks alike. The mere suggestion of a Clippers star heading to Staples Center has sent fans and analysts into a frenzy, with every detail scrutinized and every potential impact debated. Industry insiders say the deal is far from finalized, but the fact that an agreement in principle has reportedly been reached is enough to ignite fervent conversation. Lakers supporters are already imagining how this addition could reshape the team's dynamics, while Clippers fans are bracing for the possibility of losing one of their key pieces. The move, if it materializes, could be more than just a simple transfer. It might signal a new chapter in the storied Lakers-Clippers rivalry, adding even more heat to an already intense intra-city showdown. Speculation about the motivations behind the decision has been swirling as well. Some suggest that the allure of playing alongside the Lakers' current roster and the city's iconic stage may have tipped the scales. Others hint at strategic calculations on the part of the Lakers front office, eyeing a combination of talent and marketability that could create a win-win scenario both on and off the court. Analysts have begun dissecting how this potential acquisition might affect rotations, salary cap considerations, and even the long-term trajectory of both franchises. For now, no official confirmation has come from either team, but the rumor mill continues to churn at full speed. Social media is alive with speculation, memes, and heated debates as fans passionately discuss the potential implications. One thing is certain. If this move happens, it will be remembered as one of the most talked about shakeups in Los Angeles basketball history. In a city already obsessed with hoops, this story has every ingredient to dominate headlines, fueling chatter for weeks to come. Stay informed exclusively about Los Angeles Lakers news. Subscribe to our channel and hit the like button to keep receiving daily updates. Also, share your opinion on the news in the comments, as your contribution is crucial for the Lakers. Stay tuned for the next video.